Hello everyone, welcome to the today's episode. Whosoever is tuned up today we have got Vaibhav with us. Vaibhav has got more than 15 years of experience in the cybersecurity and risk and compliance. He has worked with the prestige organizations like Indian Navy, State Bank of India, and private organizations like Adani. He has been leader at various places trying to implement the cybersecurity framework in this organization. With all the experience that he has, let's try to understand what has changed during his journey when he was working with a government organization as well as a private. How was the experience and how it has helped him shape his career and also shape the cybersecurity program at this organization. So welcome, Vaibhav. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, hi Manoj. Thanks a lot for the introduction and thanks for inviting me to your
Yes,
podcast.
thank you so much. Yeah, Vaibhav, thank you so much for taking out the time. Every time I meet someone from the defense background or the Indian Navy or Air Force, the first thing that comes to my mind, we civilians, we do not understand a lot what happened in those war rooms. So, Vaibhav, I think that's where I would like to start. Like, I have been myself in the cybersecurity, but most of the time in the private organization. What is different that happens in specifically in the case of cybersecurity in the organizations like Indian Navy? What is a different thing that a normal human being or a person like me would never know?
Sure, sure. Not the nitty-gritties of it, but yes, the mindset remains the same. The mindset with which armed forces approach from cybersecurity point of view or from conventional point of view as well is knowing your enemy. It's not the weapon, it's not the situation which gives you an edge in a war time situation, but it is the information and the valid information. And that is the whole journey which, in fact, every organization is focused on. Now, coming on to Indian Navy or any armed forces or any other organization which is there, the idea, the whole bargain is to know your enemy better and what are their capabilities, what they are going to do, when, and how. If you know their move, then you have won the war. So that's the idea between any organization for that matter, even if I am in private or in government. That is the idea. What is the next move? And knowing that move in a much preemptive way and prepare yourself for that use cases. We call it in private, you call it threat modeling. In government, you call it war games, right? So you prepare well. What could go wrong? What could happen? What are the possible means? So that is what happens. But so the scenarios which are different in case of government as well as in private, what make it like different from each other is what is at stake, right? In government organization, when we say what is at stake, it's the only organization, or in case of armed forces, it is the only organization where loss of life is an accepted risk, right? And in case of a private organization, it is either reputational loss or a financial loss which you can recover. So, considering the gravity of the situation, like what is at stake, the focus and the measures which are taken is something which is of next level, which is the preparedness is high, the focus is high. You don't have to do once with your guys every time when you enter into the office. There is no time which is defined that is 9 to 5. So that's why armed forces is called services. It's not a job. Service is something selfless, like you are 260 365 24 cross 7, you are on the duty, and surface is selfless, right? So the basic, I would say, information which goes is the effort, the accountability, and the pride in which each uniform person takes it. And I usually give an example in my to my counterparts in private is like in private you have mechanisms to give extra leaves, pay hikes, bonus, shares, equities, everything to boost the morale. In case of
Yeah.
armed forces, we don't have that liberty. We don't have liberty to hire somebody specifically from cybersecurity as somebody who is SANS qualified, somebody who is CISSP qualified. We get these basic guys who are coming from lost villages, from very humble background, have very, very limited know-how about
Yeah.
computers and technology. And from there, from the very ground up, we groom them to fight these war where we show an upper hand. I think the latest example which happened in the latest skirmish between India and Pakistan, we showed an upper edge to them, what information leads and where it leads and how
Yeah.
it shows the edge. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that was a very, very good insight, Vaibhav, that you shared about that. Though it's the same information that we are trying to protect or that we are trying to get on both the sides, be it on the civilian side or be it in the armed forces. But I think the impact, because let's say if a private organization, it would just lose it, probably some financial losses or some reputation. But in case of armed forces, it can lead to loss of lives. And I think that's make it a very, very serious business. Now, I think Vaibhav, with that, my understanding has always been cybersecurity is changing every day. The landscape is changing every day with all these new threats coming, specifically this AI, blockchain, a lot of the new technologies that we talk about. Now, not just the armed forces, everything in the government, there's a lot of bureaucracy. Like even I think as a head of a department, I might know there is a threat, but to get the solution to that threat or to make that threat less risky, if I know there are some technical solution or some management solution that I need to implement, since there's a lot of bureaucracy in the government organization, how organizations like Navy make sure that how do they make sure that even the bureaucracy is being taken care and that at the same time there is the threats are being taken care? How do they make sure the speeds do not get compromised just because of the bureaucracy?
See, what I say, if I see the current government tenure, the bureaucracy level has been reduced to a large extent, right?
Hmm.
And when you call it, people call it red tapeism, people call it bureaucracy. But in my 10 years of service with Navy, what I can say, if you are clear in your thought process, and if it is all about convincing, so it's like you have to give, everybody is accountable for something or others. All checks and balances are there, right? Now the point is your argument has to be strong. So it goes both ways. You have to convince the people who are there, who are responsible for taking decision, because after all they are also accountable for it. So
Yeah.
if you have done your groundwork very well, and if you have done your vision is very clear, and you have understood the personality with whom you're going to interact, I
Yeah.
think that is not a challenge, right? Yeah, issues are always there, issues are there. But if I understand, like if Navy or any armed forces organization or any government organization, if they has a very good use case, then I don't see a challenge in going ahead with it. That is one part of it. Second thing, now the government focus is also shifting. It's a huge machinery, and they have to shift,
Yeah.
which impacts a lot of people, which impacts a lot of from money perspective also. There's a large impact. So they think, they weigh the situation, and they understand as well. That is the reason why we find it a bit slow, because it is not one person rule in government, a vetted view by which they go, rather than in a
Yeah.
private it's more of a one person view. If he feels, if my group CTO feels that has to go, then that has to go. There's no
Yeah.
second thought about it. But in government, there are processes and things are in place. And yes, I understand. But at times, if you are visionary leader, if you have a vision, if you see, and I think as you grow up in the pyramid, and your leaders which are there, they have a view of it, they understand, and their whole purpose is to understand the dynamics which are changing. And if you see, if you go back, why NTRO came into play, why
Hmm.
NCIPC came into play, it is either a reaction or a proactive mechanism in place, right? So these are the things which are read and understood by these stalwarts and by the seniors, and they take measures. Although it seems a bit slow from the outside, but there's a huge machinery which works at the back and which enables, right from the PMO's office to the services to these organizations, to perform when it is really required.
No, I think this is very right because, and that's what the democracy is like.
Yeah.
Because we are not in a setup that where just the kings take a call that okay, now this needs to be done, and like could be in a smaller organization or in a private organization where probably the head of technology or head of cybersecurity might feel something needs to be done and we do it. And yes, because again government is responsible for so many things, so many lives, so much at the stake. So I think that we might feel it slow, but I think that's the risk aversion.
Yeah.
There's a chance that in moving fast, while we are trying to avoid something else, and we get impacted by a completely unknown devil. So yes, I think that makes a lot of sense, Vaibhav. Now, now while we're talking about the might be the Indian Navy, or when we talk about the SBI or Adani, when we implement a lot of frameworks here, because as a human or as a team, we try to talk about the cybersecurity. We're trying to make our organization secure, and you implement, let's say, NIST, and you yourself have done it, at different places. What are those blind spots that you see that are, as per your experience, that you have taken in consideration into everything? And why I'm saying specifically for the SBI and Navy, because you might not know everything. You only know about your function, but in a startup, because it's a small setup, or as a financial company, it's a small setup. But in this bigger organization, you might not know everything. So, what has been those blind spots that you have come across in your experience, Vaibhav, when you were trying to implement this cybersecurity frameworks at the bigger organizations?
Okay. Okay. Fair question. See, to talk about a framework or a standard to be implemented in these large organizations, first you have to have an understanding what is your use case to do that. What use
Hmm.
case is it going to meet? If you have that clarity, let's suppose an ISO 27001 standard, right? You're
Hmm.
implementing it, but you have to do a preemptive study about how this is going to impact and what is going to be an ultimate result out of it. Not in terms of that my processes are certified with ISO 27001, but the actual results it reap by following those processes or by standardizing those processes.
Hmm. Hmm.
You don't have visibility most of the time, but if you have a visibility of scope on which we are going to focus, that okay, now my these number of controls are going to be implemented in so many processes. So the first challenge which you identify is the inertia, because standards are written by standard bodies, frameworks are written by after a lot of research, and they
Yeah.
also, and it's a continuous process. It's not a one time thing that somebody has written something and then forget about it. So
Yeah.
there's a very focused like effort which goes into stand like crafting them, and when you adopt it, you definitely see, I would say, improvement in the overall hygiene of the process, right? So the challenges which you find is the inertia in adoption of it. One is the implementation, and the second is the inertia to adopt it into your day-to-day process. Now doing that would require somewhat of more additional effort, somewhat more of taking note of something extra, which initially might sound something which is attracting more effort from the employee side, from the speed side. But on a longer go, when you see, if you have these things like baseline being met, then you are more or less secured from the basic sort of attacks which are there, right? So if you maintain those hygiene, so it not only gets you those that confidence level, but also prepares you for the future scenarios, right? So on a on an instantaneous point in time, we see, okay, there is a very limited view why we are doing it, but on a longer go, when you observe it, just by following basic things like password strength or maintaining policies, maintaining the roles and responsibilities, when you do such type of things, frameworks
Yeah.
and standard, this paves you on a longer go. When a company comes in and tells you, okay boss, I want to buy a product from you, but I want your processes in line to this particular standard or this particular framework, and please help me with your last year report or this year report. So that's where it comes in handy. It gives you a lot of edge over things, over some other company who is a startup and does not have that bandwidth to cater for those processes. So I think that's what brings in the value.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think Vaibhav, just to also add in there, because the one point that you said very very subtly, because a lot of people might not understand that
Mhm.
subtleness, because again, because the kind of experience you have, it could be very subtle for you. Is the sanity part, you know, like whatever we are trying to do, if there's enough sanity onto this, the blind spot, even if they are there, eventually they will get covered. Because also you said you should know what's in the scope,
Yeah.
and that's where you start. If you do not know what are the assets in scope, what are the people in scope, what is going to be covered, doesn't matter the big organization or the small organization, you will never know what are you trying to protect. So I
Yes.
think that's the part that you covered around the sanity makes a lot of sense, irrespective of the small organization and the big organization. And now when you're talking about this organization, there's one thing where I really want to ask you about the Mumbai power grid attack. I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure that you might not be, part of that organization or something. But again, this is something happening in the government sector. And that was a huge wake up call for a lot of government entities, because every time we think about the theft or we think about the threat, we always feel about that it will happen only to the private organization and not the public things. Even if something will happen, someone will with a rifle or with bombs will just enter. But we never thought of something like this. So what has been your understanding of that attack, and what kind of wake up call was it, and what was the changes in your role if you were around that time? Yeah, so I just want to understand that.
Okay, Manoj. So I'll just I'll just clear it out. It is on, I'll not name the entity, but it is one of the private entity only who was handling the power distribution and transmission part for Mumbai. Now, see, in my 15 years of career and which I hear from my seniors is the basic attacks or the people who are responsible for doing this. There's a reason why do they
Yeah.
do it, right? Either it is nation state sponsored or it's someone who wants it to do it for the name or fame or for the money behind it, right? Now, if I see, if you maintain basic level of checks and hygiene into your system, you are able to avert most of the problem. Let me explain you how why. In case of the attack which you are talking, I'll not name it because of unsaid reasons, but
Yeah, I understand.
the one thing which came out that between your external traffic and the internal network, right? External and internal, the boundary, it is separated by a firewall. Now that firewall was configured with a any rule. Now, this is the first hygiene check which you should take if you have implemented firewall. So most of the organization, what I'm trying to say, most of the organization, they believe I have bought one of the most costliest equipment, most costliest cybersecurity solution, and I have placed it. So now I am secured. I have included the capex. Now my work is done. But cybersecurity actually doesn't start there. Cybersecurity starts the moment you place it, how well you are configuring it, how well it is tuned to meet your requirement, right? Now, in case of firewall, this is the first thing. Any is like firewall is what? Is something which analyzes you're allowed to go inside or you're not allowed to go inside,
Yeah.
right? Now, if at the gate of your society, if I ask your guard to allow anybody from inside to outside and from outside to inside, what is the purpose of having that guard, right? The
Yeah.
same mistake done by the organization. It seems like when we go into the nitty gritties, although it is not outside, if we go into the nitty gritties of this attack, these firewalls were not configured well. And they were in that state from past 1.5 to 2 years. That means in a quarterly or 6 monthly or a 1 yearly audit, nobody has actually got into it, seen that whether the blades which are procured for this particular firewall are updated or not. Also, these are like basic patch management, basic hygiene checks, basic things like, well, what all rules are running into my firewall. Is my firewall overloaded? Is my firewall is configured with the rule set which I require right now? See, and second thing, you have a firewall. Okay, you have deployed it, you have rule sets in it, but there is somebody who should monitor it, who is coming in, who is going out. For that, you have security operation centers to monitor. These are your core devices which you should monitor. So it seems in the entire spectrum of technology which they have implemented, they were not able to, although they have machinery and tech stack in place, but there is the governance which is missing, and which is the toughest part to run any organization or any cyber operations.
Yeah.
Any organization where there is a cyber attack, always there is a case that they have had everything in place. The only thing is that they didn't have the visibility because they didn't understood the game, right?
Yeah.
They understood in a way, okay, I want a firewall, let's buy the best firewall. I want an IDS, let's buy a best IDS. But how well you have configured it? Who will monitor it? What should be
Yeah.
what are the things which should be shown to me in the case of emergency or in case of usual operation? So there is nothing, because that is operational cost. And cyber takes the backstage the moment things are always good. We always see it's nothing is happening, why we need 5 people to monitor it, let's make it 1 people, right? And that's what you face. Now after that attack, the entire setup is like changed, everything is improved. But yes, there is a problem. And the problem is you understand the problem correct at the very first step. If you don't do that, you will suffer like this.
Yeah. No, again, I think here it's a classic example of things have been done just as a part of the checklist. That
Yeah.
we require an IDS, intrusion detection system, we got it. We need a firewall, we got it. But do we have the enough governance? Do we have the enough reporting? Are we looking at our risk indicators? What could go wrong, or what is the probability of going wrong? And nothing has been checked. And that's where I think that's the right message for anyone who's even in fact watching this. Like, just putting the systems in places, just putting your ideas in places is not going to help enough. You need to have people, you need to have the team who understands that how the governance structure works around this. There has to be right reporting. And that's the only way we can avoid such incidences in the future. Now we're talking about this attack. Now, very unfortunate that what happened in very recent days, probably a couple of weeks back, the India Pakistan, uh, uh, as an Indian, don't want anything to happen for anyone, like not just for my country, but for any country. So again, whatever little knowledge, because now you're out of the system, what do you think? Was there anything from the cybersecurity side that was compromised from either side when this particular attack happened, Vaibhav?
From cybersecurity side, so see, in any game, it is not only one tool which plays an important role. It is a multiple tool sets. So cybersecurity is one of the tool set, right?
Yeah,
Ground intelligence is something which is another tool set, and
yeah,
so there are a lot of things which comes into play.
yeah,
What we understand and what I know, probably this is my personal opinion and what I
yeah,
heard
yeah, please.
of the experts, is there is some mess from our end. But at the same time, what I heard from the senior officers who are involved and who know this situation very closely, there's an equal participation of internal people who are part of this whole thing. It cannot be individually being orchestrated by someone outside, and people have no view of it. So to give you an example, if in your society or in your colony, if somebody new comes in and stays, you will definitely get to know. You, some or other person will get to know. Your servant or your gatekeeper or your cleaner, somebody will find out that there is someone who is not amongst us, who was not from amongst, like who are not from
Yeah,
within, right? And they should ideally report it, because as we say, what I heard from my counterparts, or forge cannot be anywhere, right? मतलब हर जगह deploy नहीं कर सकते आप, ठीक है?
yeah,
So it is a combined job of everybody to avert it. So from cyber perspective, I would say it just form some part of it, but getting this information through cyber is, you might get some information, but the validity and authenticity of that information and to act upon it, probably it's not that viable solution to act, right? You get million, like in a country like India, you get, if you sit in a war room and these intelligence feed comes in, probably millions of threats feeds which comes in, and then narrow it down to something that to like Pahalgam is going to happen. It is something, we need an apparatus. Yes, we need an apparatus, but we cannot say that cyber is missed. It might be playing a role, but at a backseat, or something was missed, I would say. But it's not completely cyber who is responsible for it. It's a
yeah.
combined failure, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's the reason we call it, like when we talk about the operational risk, it's a combination of people, process, and technology. You might have taken care of a process and technology very well, and which in case of our armed forces, I'm very sure they must have taken care of. But I think when the people come into the picture, like you said, there could be an insider, and that's the reason we always call it the Trojan horse or the insider threat, and that would have caused this whole thing. Now let's understand from the another side. Let's say if I'm a CEO of a big organization and who do not understand anything of the SOC part, But now because I'm scaling very fast, what are the top three fundamentals that you feel, because you've seen both the sides, the government side and also the big private organizations like Adani, and now you're working at Airtel. What are the top three fundamentals that remain same irrespective which part you are, and which is something every CISO or every CEO should understand about the cyber risk or the other risk and compliance?
Okay. Okay. So I always, if something like this is there, first step is to accept the fact that I'm not aware of cybersecurity. Accept that there is a problem, right? And then table a problem. Unless you don't accept it, that I don't have a vision of it, I don't have a view of it, and I need assistance, nobody will come and give you the assistance. So that is the first most important part. You have to accept the fact, yes, my operations are expanding. My operations need an equal security, and cybersecurity is one of the most important point in today's threat landscape. Cyber is no longer technical risk. It's a boardroom risk. If you don't do it properly, you will become some bank from Pune. I'll not name it, but some bank from Pune or some IT provisioning organization from US. So there are multiple examples out in the wild, and you will become the next big news, right? So I always, at times, our senior used to tell us in my previous stints that, well, why do you bring bad news? Like, why you do you bring always on a Monday morning? You bring all the bad news. So I used to answer that, sir, it's my duty first, and it's better that I bring it to you rather than a news channel portraying it as a highlight, right? So, so you have to
That's
do.
a very witty way of putting it.
Yeah, so it's always good. Like if somebody thinks, and to all my course mate colleagues who are there doing some bit or other in the cyber job, I always give them this analogy. If somebody doubts that why we need cyber, what do you do guys do? Why don't you bring something has been done, something has been implemented? This is the profit. So cyber is a cost center. You have to
Yeah,
understand, right? Cyber is a
yeah. Everyone, yeah.
now, it depends upon the leader how he makes it a profit center, depending upon organization to organization and what is the focus of the organization. That is one thing, right? So, if it's a cost center, you have to first accept it. Ki, boss, I need to shell out money to protect me. If you don't, then other will compromise you. And I think that is very well understood by financial organizations. And what is important is what is at stake. That is the most important part. But these days, not even a bakery or a medical manufacturing industry or anything is left out, right? Everything is under radar.
Yeah,
Everything is under radar. So now you have to decide whether you want to call it as technical risk or you want to call it as a boardroom risk. That depends upon my leaders or the leaders of that organization who are responsible to run that business. It's better to analyze, identify, and be prepared, like proactive mechanism, rather than you get hit and then you act, which is reactive. So it's commonly said in cyber, it's like every leadership position who are in cyber, your budgets are just one attack away from you.
yeah.
Once you get attacked, you will see huge money coming in, and everybody wants to make everything right.
Yeah,
Let me explain you one thing. Cyber is not an overnight journey, right? It's not an overnight goal. It's a journey which you need to do, and you need to understand what your organization is,
yeah,
how much you need to spend money, how much not, because at certain point you will get saturated. So that conscious understanding, to answer your question, first to understand and accept the fact that I need cyber and it's a
yeah,
problem. It's a problem which is required to be addressed.
yeah,
Second thing, I should get someone from outside if I don't understand it well, right?
yeah,
At the same time, I also participate. I do not palm that job off that I have hired a CISO. Now it is his job to look,
yeah,
right? Because after all, cybersecurity is more like auditors. They are the people who analyze, understand. They are like doctors. They will suggest you,
yeah,
keep, sir, there is a problem. You need to address this. This is the amount of money. This is the time you would require to recover. Now it is up
Yeah,
to you. You bargain, I will take a course of 1 week instead of 1 month. I will do bypass over this particular surgery. I will take this churan. Then your body will also be exposed to those type of threat, right?
yeah,
Similarly to the an organization, if you don't implement the right medicine with the right doctor, with the right expertise, and with right understanding of that particular disease, you will
yeah,
eventually face some music, right? So
yeah.
yeah, that is there. I think
Yeah.
I've answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think very well answered, and with a lot of analogies that you use, Vaibhav, like you need to accept that you do not know it, then you need to bring in someone who understands it, and third, you need to participate it as your own, because I think security is something that you cannot outsource. So I think Vaibhav, we spoke about a lot of things, and I think it was a very much enlightening experience from me listening from someone like you, those who has spent so much of time into this domain, Vaibhav. Now, before we end this, any one piece of advice for someone very young who's starting into this domain of the cybersecurity or risk and compliance?
Okay, okay. See, you initially asked me there are a lot of things which are happening on blockchain, AI, trendscapes are changing, and we usually get bogged down what to focus on. And being industry veteran, we think if we are getting baffled by that, what happens to the newcomer who is joining into the industry? What should be their focus? See, anything happens outside, whatever, these are like flavors of things which are coming in, but the base remains the same. So if we categorize cybersecurity, one part is networks and second part is web. If you have your basics very clear, right, you will be able to make your way up through the domain. That is the
Yeah,
first part of it. Second part of it, like a lot of people from armed forces which move out of the organization and the youngsters who approach me, I always tell them first focus, study the domain, why you want to be part of this domain. That has to be very clear.
mm,
It's not only about money, it's not only about the computers, it's not only about the name I am from cybersecurity, but you need to double click it. It brings to you. Like it is, I give a very simple example. Passing IIT exam or IIM exam is one part of it. But doing those 8 semesters or 2 years program inside that institution is equally hard, right? It
yeah,
goes with IAS also, right? You pass the exam, but when you go on field and start doing the work, you understand the dynamics and what it takes. So without understanding that thing, if you're trying to enter into cybersecurity is a place where there are maximum burnouts, right? Because the capable workforce is less, money is high, but it is something which is unstable factor on which you should not take decision, right? It will become complacent of after a given period of time. But what is the drive, what is making you
uh,
to get into this field, that has to be very clear. That is the first thing. And second thing is the hard work. You learn your basics well, you have a lookout, and your never ending ability to learn more. Stability is not something which is highly appreciated in cybersecurity.
yeah.
You have to grow, you have to learn, you have to be agile, and you have to keep up with the market. If you're ready for these things and if you like such type of scenarios, you're very well welcome into cybersecurity.
Yeah, no, I think Vayu, the one point that you said, there are more chances of failure than success in cybersecurity and especially because everyone out is trying to just penetrate into your network,
Yeah.
and you have to create your defense so high, and no matter how strong you create it, there will be some failure, and then you have to take a burn of it. So yes, Vaibhav, thank you so much, for taking out time and sharing all these anecdotes, all the stories, all the knowledge that you have shared with us. I hope you also got a chance to revisit the whole journey of yours while talking to us, Vaibhav. Let's keep connected, Vaibhav. I think probably we'll get more chances to speak on it,
Oh,
and there will be more opportunities where I'll come back to you with more questions in the future, Vaibhav.
sure, Manoj. Sure.
Yeah.
It was nice speaking to you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Vaibhav.